E.C. Ambrose writes adventure novels inspired by research subjects like medieval surgery, ancient clockworks, and Byzantine mechanical wonders. Published works include Drake Master from 2022, the Dark Apostle series, and the Bone Guard archaeological thrillers. Her next adventure will be an interactive superhero novel, Sky Strike: Wings of Justice for Choice of Games. EC, over to you.
Hi, thank you. That is going to be kind of a tough act to follow, but I will do my best. So, and if you do sign up today, when you get that little survey and you can fill it out and you can let us know if you want to join mailing lists, you get 3 free short stories if you join my mailing list. And also you will be sent a link to the first 3 chapters of Drake Master. I'm going to be reading to you chapter 3. The long light of the setting sun cast the astronomical instruments into strange shadows that interlaced like gears across the floor. They lapped at Bao Jing's tiny feet as she bent over her charts and paper, her brush furiously moving, her long fingers spotted with ink. She had to finalize the chart and understand what the stars were trying to tell her. The celestial throne shone brightly, orange and gleaming among the vivid stars around it, but the pattern of the dark lance looked wrong. One of the wandering stars edged toward it, moving backward. If she were right, it would ring the lance and signal the advent of a radiant energy that would damage the imperial palace and devastate the Han people. Terrible danger could be coming, more terrible even than the Mongols, if such were possible. Last night's observations were obscured by an inauspicious cloud, but she had the historical record, her father's and grandfather's observations going back for decades. Surely she could. Bao Jing. She jerked at the voice and her pen left a few drops of ink across her careful work. Yes, Papa. What do you see? Are they coming? Just a moment. I'm almost done. She blotted the drops, but one of them smeared the characters of the pole star, the Emperor's star, into something else entirely. There is no more time for that, Bao Bao. His voice drew nearer, then his shadow fell alongside hers, merging with the circular shadows of the astronomical instruments. Bao Jing blinked back tears. His hand stroked her hair, then rested too heavily against the back of her neck, and she looked up, following his gaze. Across the valley, smoke curled, and flames danced where the Cloud Mountain Monastery stood. A dark file of soldiers moved back toward the river far below, but another, smaller group pressed onward, up the steep track to Bao Jing's own quiet peak. When the soldiers came, all of this, her father, their instruments, their scrolls and diagrams, all could be gone in moments, and he wanted her to leave, to dress in boys' clothing, smear her face, and vanish into the countryside, leaving the tower and their observations to be burned or broken at the soldiers' will. There had to be another way. Here, Papa, the chart isn't finished yet. I know, but the sign suggests there's danger. Look at the way the clouds circle at the dark lance. Her father reached out and took the brush from her hand, setting it back on the inkstone. Bao Bao, there is no more time for more signs. Even if there were a greater danger than the army already at our mountain, there is no one we could warn. But Papa, he settled his thin hand against her face, a warm and comforting, too frail. You must take your eyes from the sky and look to the earth, Bao Bao. You have to go. She pressed his hand to her cheek. If they don't find something worth taking here, some treasure, they'll kill you. The only treasure I have is you, he told her, and I am not afraid to die. And the work would be unfinished. She turned on her stool to face him. Who will carry on if not for us? The future of the land might rest on this. Even if we knew on what day, at what hour a thing might come to pass, how could we act upon it? We alone are not enough to stop some great catastrophe. Even if we knew the dark lance would strike, the emperor moved south. We could not reach him. Then we should have gone with him. The shadow of grief passed her father's face. Her mother had been dying when the last of the emperor's family fled. She had been too weak to travel, and they dare not move her. This last time, Bao Jing, be a dutiful daughter and leave your father to his fate. She lowered her head, her fingers hesitating over the brush, then taking up the handle of the cane that hung from the side of her work table. She propped herself on it and made her cautious way to the stairs, inching down them. When her father wasn't there, she usually dropped to her bottom and bumped her way down, as she had when she was a child. But young ladies of marriageable age could not behave in such a way. Bao Jing descended as far as the second floor, outside the room where her mother had died. She used to pause and glare on the long, tedious way up the stairs. Her mother's courtly wish for her future had crippled her, binding her feet to make her the perfect bride. After Mother's death, Papa couldn't bring himself to let Baojing go, and so it was her father's gifts she took up instead, her father's work that she pursued, and her father's dreams she took into her heart. Her mother's dream had given her nothing but pain and sorrow. Carved into the closed door, double happiness suggested the devotion her parents had known in their own marriage. Baojing had rejected all of that, stuck only with her miniature feet as a reminder of what might have been. Hide herself as a boy, and she could hobble through the mountains, begging for her keep, doing what she must to honor her family. She blinked away tears, picturing her father dead, picturing her mother dead years before, her face made up perfectly, her paint, her hair complementing her great beauty. Her mother was pleased, at least, not to grow old and ugly, but to pass from the world at the summit of her splendor. A dutiful daughter. Her father had said she was his only treasure. Might there be another way to show her duty and to honor her father, a way where they both could live and even continue their urgent work? Perhaps by setting aside her father's legacy, she could preserve it, and him. The door creaked inward and she hobbled through into her mother's domain, a foreign place of rich fabrics, delicate embroideries, bottles of paints, and drawers full of gold and pearl combs to pin up the silken darkness of one's hair. Baojing closed the door behind her and sat at the table, taking up a bronze mirror, startled to find the faint image of her mother staring back at her. In the years she had been her father's daughter, she had become her mother's as well. The time had come to reveal it. Baojing worked as carefully as she ever had on a chart of stars. She dressed in a robe so fine that it caught upon the roughness of her hands. She painted her face with pearl dust into a pale, perfect moon. She applied rouge to her lips and cheeks and tweezed away her brows, drawing them in perfect form. She combed back her long hair and twisted it into careful knots, tucking in a series of golden combs shaped like butterflies that jingled with jewels. At her ears, she hung a pair of enormous pearls. On her tiny feet, she wore a pair of slippers that showed months of stitches worked in silk. Her sleeves draped beyond her fingertips, signaling that she was a woman who had no need of work, and concealing her ink-stained fingers. With every stitch of clothing and brush of color, she concealed her heart, trying to embody her mother's perfection, a beautiful, painted corpse. Outside, footfalls sounded, voices shouted, and someone pounded on the door of the house. Her father hurried down the stairs, but Baojing opened the chamber before he could pass the landing. He stumbled to a halt. Baojing, tell them my name, Papa. Tell them I am for the Khan, and no other. She stared hard at his widened eyes and gripped the cinnabar cane so tightly the carvings ground into her palms. They will take you away, his eyes glistened. What will become of you? She didn't want to think of that. Invoking the Khan should be enough to protect her, she hoped. Baojing swallowed. I will be his, and you will live in peace. The prophecy of the Dark Lance, Papa. You told me that our very world depends upon it. The truth must be found. He gave her a quick, fierce embrace and hurried down before her, shouting, I am coming. Please forgive my lateness. With her mother's serenity, Baojing descended the stairs, leaving her father's world behind her, surrendering the stars. Thank you.
Oh my.